Hi everyone, it's Russell Lowe here, and welcome to my workshop, and welcome to a little bit of a walk around on the Truth. The racing's been cancelled this year, you know, like everyone's. So I thought I would give you a little bit of a walk around. This is the first time I've seen it together as well. So I thought it might be nice to just show you where I got up to, and I'll start her up, and then maybe talk about some things that I'd like to do for next year now. Anyway, we'll start from the front and work our way backwards. This front part here, just recapping, that little nosy part there is from, just that top part is from following the contours of a Honda Blackbird, which are notoriously slippery. The rest of the shapes are actually from a NASA shape that comes to me highly recommended from Walter. Thank you, Walter. And you can see I've used that same shape here. It looks like a parabola when you when you're at the front end of it. The back end of it tapers off and has a little bit of a swoosh. See if I can get back a little bit. So there's the profile. You would have seen that a couple of times, but finally that little hang on, where's my finger? Finally that little part is actually not cardboard. You can see the welds aren't really smoothed off. I didn't quite get enough time to do that, and a little bit of turbulence I thought might be helpful. That's an unhelpful column. Obviously it's the same this side, and then if we have a look inside, she's nice and airy, which is good. I get a little bit claustrophobic, or have gotten a little bit claustrophobic in some of the other builds that I've done. Anyway, so this I think is much more open. Let's hop on, and okay, so what have we got? Got a rev counter, which is nice. Haven't had one of those before. The stop and go, that's the clutch. So actually if I turn the clutch on, which is here, it lights up, and then you can hear the motor going, which is just down here. So here we go. And that you can tell that it's or hear that it's turning off automatically. There's a few little switches down there. I'm not 100% with that, so I'll come back to that a little bit later to sort of describe what I might actually do. To improve that. Brakes all hooked up. This goes to the rear, and then actually, there we go. That's the massive fuel pump priming. So let's see if she'll start up for us. This will be noisy. Anyway, that's enough of that. It's going to fucking wake the dead and potentially the neighbours' kids as well. I always warn Henry nowadays. That's the water pump. You might be able to hear that going now. And then this one over here is another switch, and that turns on my generator. So all of these things are independent of the electronics of the motor, which is a deliberate move to try and make things a bit more redundant. That's that fuel pump I pointed out. the water comes out of the motor here and into a radiator that's actually in this box, and this is, think of it as a bucket. It just fills up with water. So instead of exchanging the heat from the radiator to the air, it exchanges it to the water here. That's another thing I'm going to improve later on. And then the motor's the same as last year. Haven't actually changed a thing on that, I don't think. And not that it needed much. It's probably done about 20 miles now in total. And then there's the rear end. And so that's all hiding pretty much the same stuff as last year. In the clutch I've had, which is in under here, actually under that part there, the clutch has had a few improvements with some new parts and what have I done? Oh, I've strengthened it up a little bit so that things weren't flexing so much. There's a lot of force involved in actuating the clutch, and then if we look under here, there's some struts and a little bit of bodywork to make it a bit sort of enclosed. Really, this bodywork at the back's not doing that much, other than if the bike decides to go sideways, it presents that face there to the wind, and because the weight is in front of that, it works like a bit of a dart, and it'll and hopefully the idea there is that the wind pushes it back into line again. And you might notice my frilly bits on the end. I've had some Batman related comments on those, which I find very challenging to my fragile ego, and but they are serving a purpose. The idea is to break up the vortices on the end of the as it comes off, the wind comes off those panels, and so that when they intersect with each other back behind the bike, they don't actually start off in oscillation. So there is a point to doing them that way, and hopefully they work, but we'll never know. Anyway, try not to trip over all of the shit. There it is. So I mentioned there are a few things that I'd like to do to improve it, and one of them is doing something to the clutch, or the clutch actuation. So what I've done is I've used that electric motor and everything to replace this big ass foot clutch, which sort of hung right out the front here and obviously doesn't fit with that. That could shift back into there and have a linkage on it coming forward to where the clutch is. I could even cut that off and shift that if necessary. But it's still, I'm trying to figure out ways to create levers that can actually have a short throw, but also a reasonably long movement with good power. So obviously those things don't generally come together. But I'd like to maybe replace this because it works too slowly. So it works well, but it works slowly. So it doesn't give you much chance to push the clutch in and stop forward drive if you'd like to do that in a hurry. And when you want to do it in a hurry, you really want it to happen quickly. So that's one thing I'd like to improve. I think this is, I've been toying with the idea just in the last couple of days of having another go at that top fairing. You always get better if you do things twice, so I'd like to think that I could actually do a better job there. And then the other major thing I've been concerned about for a while is keeping the motor cool. And in the run it's not too bad, but I think if with more aerodynamics around it, more streamlining, it means that it's going to, I think, heat up a little bit more. So what I've got is that radiator there, I'm actually going to put it in behind here, and this part here I just made yesterday is actually going to bolt to the bodywork here, and the tubes, instead of this tube sticking out the side like a bit of a bull's up, I'm going to weld something on the back here, and it's going to come straight out through the back, disappear into here, and then that'll go into that one, and then another one will come out of the front there and go underneath, and this tube will come out up here, across here, and into here. So it'll give it an extra radiator, and with a fan on it, as you can see. So that'll help hopefully with cooling it down in between runs. And the cooler it is in between runs, the more runs I'll be able to get out of it. And with a better clutch, I think I should be able to do loops, which would be the ideal. And finally, I've created a Excel spreadsheet with some gearing solutions. So you can see this one's that's a 35 on the front, I think, or 30. No, it's a 30, and it goes to a 40 under there, and then that 40 goes to a 26, and that 26 goes to a 39 tooth on the back. And I did that in a hurry a couple of years ago, and that gears me to about 221 miles an hour. And the problem is that I don't get any flexibility, because the sprocket on the back, which is the only non-custom one, is the smallest you can get. So what I'll do is I'll change one of the gears in the middle there, the third one in the line. It's not a gear, sorry, it's a sprocket. I'll change that, and then I'll change that to a 35 from a 26, and that means I can use a whole range of off-the-shelf sprockets for the Suzuki back wheel. And so I've got a 48, a 44, a 42, and a 39. So I can quickly just whip the rear wheel off and change the gearing dramatically, so that I can up the revs or that sort of thing. And that way I can sneak up past 200 and then see where it can, how much further, hopefully, it'll be able to go. So this video is a little bit longer than I was thinking that I'd make it, but you know, what else have you got to do? That did actually take a little bit longer than I thought it would, but you know, hopefully it's a little bit of a distraction from all of the garbage that's going on at the moment. Look, all that's left to say is that I'm looking forward to seeing you guys out on the salt again in 2021.